A lot of people have made a lot about the fact that Vrabel spoke first. I don't think that's a big deal. Look, I don't think anybody that is looking at this from the outside looking in, I don't think anybody that knows anything about football doesn't think that Vrabel has a major voice over the operation of this football team. He doesn't come here if he doesn't have a say over personnel.
Which
He
he said.
doesn't come here and get paid 15 mil a year, which we're assuming he's making, if he's not going to have a major say over personnel in the roster. And yeah, maybe Elliot Wolf does have final say over who gets picked to play for this football team, who they sign, who they draft. But at the end of the day, you better believe that Mike Vrabel will have, if not final say, he will have a strong say on who is on his roster. There's a reason why he brought Ryan Cowden in. He brought Cowden in because he wants one of his guys in that front office. And so far, yeah, you'd have to say that everything that's coming out of there sounds pretty good in terms of Vrabel and Wolf's relationship. And again, I don't think Elliot Wolf, with his pedigree and his reputation, I don't think Elliot Wolf stays if he didn't feel he was going to have a say in terms of personnel and player acquisition. Obviously, he'll have some kind of a say, but I do think that at the end of the day, this is Mike Vrabel's football team. Make no mistake about it. He didn't necessarily draw the line in the sand and stake a flag, but we all knew going into the last week, and we've known since he's been hired, that this is his football team and that he's going to be the ultimate decision maker. Now, is he going to have the same level of power and influence that Bill Belichick had? No, of course not. He's not going to have that. But on the football ops side, it's going to be pretty close, in my opinion. I think he's going to have a lot more power and say in terms of what players are brought in, who signs, who's drafted, and who makes the team. He will be, in many ways, especially when it comes to the 53-man roster, he is going to be the final voice in that regard, at least in my opinion, and I think it's going to play out that way. As far as the combine is concerned and who impressed and who didn't, a lot of guys impressed. A lot of guys had strong performances. Obviously, the running back group, very impressive. Running back is a sneaky need for the Patriots, and I think this group impressed this weekend. And I think it's a group where the Patriots, like any other team in the league, can dip into that group and get a pretty productive player. It's just a matter of when do they want to draft that player and when do they want to draft for that position. My guess is day 3. I thought the running backs had a really good day. Tight ends were a disappointment to me. I mean, we know what Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland can do. They're your 2 first-rounders. This is a deep group of tight ends, but they disappointed. They did not run well. I was not impressed with the on-field work with them. Tight end is another position where the Patriots do need to add depth, if nothing else. I could see them going the veteran route to signing a second tight end, maybe bringing back Austin Hooper. But this is a position that I had higher expectations for going into the draft, and they disappointed. The quarterbacks, they were okay. I mean, Jackson Dart definitely helped himself to the point where I think he could sneak into the first round. Talking to some people, they think that around the league, there's a handful of teams that have him as their second-rated quarterback behind Cam Ward. So it's going to be interesting to see come pro day time if Shedeur Sanders helps his stock and if Jackson Dart can help his stock even more. I've said this all along, Kevin. I feel that when you look at the quarterback class in this draft, the strength of the group is going to be rounds 2 through 5. That's where you're going to be able to get a guy that you could potentially develop as either a starter or as a backup. The defensive line, edge guys, they lived up to the hype. That is a very deep and talented group. This is my 26th NFL draft. That is as deep as I've ever seen D-line and edge. There's a lot of guys that are going to step in and make an impact as rookies this fall at those 2 positions. And again, those are 2 positions that the Patriots need to address. They need to find an elite-level pass rusher this offseason. They need another defensive tackle, especially with Devon Godshaw now being on the open market. They're looking to trade him, which they should. He's not exactly a good scheme fit. With Godshaw now being trade bait, the uncertainty with Christian Barmore, defensive tackle, becomes a much bigger need than we thought. And I thought that the secondary guys also had a really, really good week as well. They impressed. I thought that they ran well. They tested well. That's a talented group. Wide receiver, same thing. You don't have the elite level guys outside of Tep McMillan and Travis Hunter, but there's still a lot of talent there. And I've said this all along, Stone. The wide receiver position is a position that is going to be a strong position in the draft every single year. In this day and age of the spread offense, we're developing receivers now more than we ever have. That's always going to be a position of strength. And perhaps the biggest story that came out of Indianapolis is the fact that Will Campbell's arm length is under 33 inches, which I think is going to affect his draft stock. Would it affect it if I were the decision maker? Probably not, because I'd love to take him and give him a shot at left tackle, and if it doesn't work out, I kick him inside. Patriots don't have that luxury. They need two tackles. They have a glut at guard and center. They don't have the luxury of saying, we're going to take Will Campbell, and if his arm length becomes an issue at left tackle, we're going to kick him inside. You can't do it with Lane Robinson and Caden Wallace and Sidney So and Cole Strange and Mike Onwenu. You got a lot of bodies in there. You've got bodies in depth at guard. You can't afford to draft a Will Campbell and kick him inside. Somebody will do that, and I think they're going to get a hell of a football player, because when you look at his footwork, you look at his athleticism, he's elite, but the arm length is obviously going to be an issue. I'm not sure it'll be an issue for the Patriots per se, but I think it's going to be enough of an issue that they don't take him, because, again, they may not want to kick him inside. So I think that's part of it as well. As far as the local guys, you hit the nail on the head. Donovan Ezeraku, going into the week, I think a lot of people thought he could go in the 20s. Now you're looking at 15 to 32, in my opinion. And he can cement – I don't know how much he actually works out at his pro day, but he can certainly cement his status as a top 20 pick. That's the way it's trending. He was very impressive. Drew Kendall, I thought, had a good weekend. Ozzie Trapillo had a good weekend. I thought he looked pretty good. So overall, it was a good weekend for the BC guys. The only other local guy that was there in terms of played in a local program was Chase Lunt from UConn. Max Brosmer, who played at UNH, he was also there. And there were a couple of local guys as well. Xavier Truss, who played at Bishop Hendricken High School, was there. Josiah Stewart was also invited as well. He played at Everett. So, but I thought a really good week for the BC guys. I thought they all helped their draft stock, especially Ezeraku.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donovan might run the 40 at the pro day. I'm not sure. He didn't run it. Cam Horsley didn't run it either. What'd you think of Cam Horsley?
They'll run it at their pro day. I thought Horsley looked pretty good. Look, I think Cam. What's that?
He looked quick at times.
He did. I think the thing with Horsley is he's a wide body. He's going to be a shade 2-eye and a 40 front. He can play some nose for you in 30 fronts. That's where I think his value is. He's a guy that has some pretty good short area lateral quickness. He can be heavy-handed. He plays with strong hands, which is good because that means he can control blockers in two-gap. I mean, again, is he a guy that's going to go the first 2 days? No, but I think he could be a really good value piece on day 3. I think he does have starter potential, and if he doesn't start, he could definitely be a rotational piece that plays a lot of snaps defensively, especially on first down, second and short, and third and short. So, I know I didn't mention him with that first group. I didn't think he popped as much as they did, but just like those guys, he helped himself as well.
And just one other story that just popped in my head that came out, nothing to do locally. The kid who rolled his ankle and went through the entire rest of the day, and you couldn't tell that he had a severely sprained ankle. Part of me, obviously, that's a hell of a job by him, showing he had the balls to get
that was Gunnar Helm, I think, the tight end at Texas. Yeah.
But the other part, as a coach, I'm curious, would you rather not see him do that? Like, he could have severely made that much more severe. You know what I mean? Like, I get it's your one big job interview, but man, he's lucky. I'll say that.
Well, I don't think it matters to coaches. It's more about him and his agent, right? I mean, if you're his agent, you might scoff at him gutting it out and say, hey, what are you doing here, man? This is your future. So I think it's more between player and agent than coach. I mean, from a coaching standpoint, I love that. I mean, I would. Does it change where I put him on my draft board? Probably not. But I mean, if nothing else, it gets your attention enough that you say, hey, you know what? Tough kid, willing to play through pain, willing to give you everything he has. If we have a pick and we can use some depth at that position and he's sitting on the board, yeah, that doesn't hurt. It definitely helps his draft status in terms of coaches around the league, because they're going to have an appreciation for what he did. it was the same thing yesterday. Um, when you look at some of the linemen, a couple of the linemen got dinged up, and they were able to gut it out and finish drills. So, I mean, look, I think it does tell a lot of these teams a lot about the toughness and the commitment of these guys and the willingness to push through pain and finish the drills and make an impression. So I
Eh,
think that's a good thing if you ask me. I mean, you're asking me if I were their
Yeah,
agent, I wouldn't
yeah.
say it's a good thing. But in my view, I think from an evaluation standpoint, it is.
One of the questions I meant to ask you last week, I was shocked that Jacob Dobbs was not invited to the combine. Were you?
No, no, I
Really?
wasn't. Yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't shocked.
I
I
thought he
I
might be.
love Jacob Dobbs. I think he's a hell of a football player. If he was invited, it wouldn't shock me in the least bit. One of the best linebackers at the FCS level, and he had a hell
Yeah.
of a year last year at James Madison. Um, on the one hand, I could see him not being invited as a surprise because they're not. They're the off-ball linebackers in this class aren't great. Jahan Campbell really helped himself from Alabama. He had a great day. You got Jalen Walker out of Georgia, but I think that's part of it. Is that off-ball linebackers are such it's almost like a delicacy now where you're not going to play three linebackers across the board if you're a 4-3 team. Those days are over now because teams are living in nickel and dime. You're not seeing as many off-ball linebackers get invited to the combine unless they're guys that can do some different things. Now, Dobbs to me, I think, is more of a traditional off-the-ball linebacker who's a pretty effective blitzer. He can walk up and blitz. He can mug. He can do those things. But like I said, I don't think you're seeing as many of those guys getting the invitation rather, as you've seen in years past.
Makes sense. It just when the list first came out and not seeing him this weekend, it was just sort of surprising to me.
Yeah, yeah. The other big story, of course, yesterday was a piece that was written in the Herald by Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyde. Hat tip to those guys; they do terrific work. A couple of interesting tidbits from that piece. One, Robin Glazier. Apparently, it sounds like um, she's now leaving on her own accord. Let's put it that way. There's stories now surfacing that she tried to sabotage or go against Bill Belichick. Um, they also talked about in the piece that Gerard Mayo may not coach again. Although, as I said yesterday on Patriots Pulse, I have a pretty reliable source that told me that he does want to coach again, but it's going to have to be the right situation. Um, Interesting piece nonetheless. I mean, Andrew and Doug, like I said, do great work. Obviously, they really work their sources and put out some good content there. Just some thoughts on the Robin Glazier Mayo stuff.
First of all, Doug and Andrew are they're the best of what they do right now, in my opinion. So congrats to them on that story. As you said, it was very good. Um, Look, I've heard people referencing Robin Glazier today and calling her Elon Glazier, which is just funny. I'm sorry. It's true.
What were
That's
they
just
calling her? Elon
Elon
Glazier?
Glazier, which that's what she
Why
was
are they
called.
calling her Elon Glazier?
She's the Dodge equivalent
Oh,
of what they wanted to do. It just sounds like she did it the incorrect way, is what it sounds
she
like.
went rogue?
So it's yeah, I mean, look, we just from what we know about her history with the team, from the Spygate stuff, depicting her in the documentary with the hammer, like there's never been a great picture of her painted. And I think there's just sort of this adds to it if you're a fan, right? Like she's never going to get and she was never going to get a lot of credit for any success, anyways. But any part that she might have had, she's now never going to get credit for. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is just, it's more stuff on top of more stuff. Um, I'm glad that she's now gone, but it also speaks to the crafts. And I don't know if what cutting corners is, for lack of a better term, it is what it is. I don't like to, I hope that they're not those kind of owners. Like I don't think they are. We've briefly met them for a few seconds at a time and said hello. They've always been engaging. I've talked to Jonathan a few times just in passing at BC. Again, very engaging, but they don't feel like bad owners to me. It feels like they just had a really, really bad run of ownership. I don't think they're John Henry. I don't think they're, the Jacobs family with the Bruins. I don't, and I hope I'm right, but it's just another sort of example of where they've gone wrong as well.
Yeah, and it's, look, I mean, Robin Glazier and what she did there was shrouded in mystery for a long time. We knew she was involved on the legal side, but obviously she transitioned to football ops. We really didn't know what she did on that side of things. I did think it was interesting that she was, quote, sabotaging or trying to sabotage Bill Belichick. It's why now you see why she became the assistant to the head coach last year once Belichick was gone. She was elevated to that role. Clearly, Mike Vrabel, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, it's abundantly obvious that Mike Vrabel didn't want her back. I mean, I know that they're going to paint it as she left on her own accord, and she might have, but my guess is when Vrabel came in, he probably intimated to her that he wanted to go in another direction, and that's what they're doing. The Mayo stuff is interesting to me because, like I said, I've spoken to a pretty reliable source who said to me he does want to coach again. But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't coach again because, as I said to John Lyons yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if he did some television, went back into the private sector. Obviously, when you have the experience that he had last year, it kind of sort of jades your view of things, and you feel jaded about what happened. And I think that that's the case here. I think that if he doesn't coach again, it's because this experience left a very bad taste in his mouth.
Yeah, I could see that. I trust your source. B, what do we always hear? You always hear football coaches want to coach. If he truly is a football guy, he'll be back. That's just how I feel. Who knows? Maybe he ends up in college for a year. You never know. Like maybe he gets his juices back that way. I don't think he's done by any means. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Time will tell. And of course, for the second straight year in a row, the Kraft family and the New England Patriots, they did not do so well on their player report card. You wrote about that last week. Now, I think you bring up a pretty good point. I don't think that report card is indicative of who they are as owners. I agree with you. I think they're much better owners than that. Some people have said, well, the reason it's happening and it's coming to light now is because for years Brady was masking all this stuff. That the Brady masking stuff narrative needs to stop. Okay, can we just stop? I don't care how good Brady was. If your facilities suck and it's a shitty experience for the players, yes, winning helps, but that doesn't mean that the players still aren't having a bad experience when it comes to treatment or facilities or food or daycare or whatever else. Okay, yes, winning is nice, and maybe what winning does is it curtails some of the complaining. But I mean, again, it's such a lazy narrative around here when it comes to Belichick and Kraft and the organization. Well, Brady masked a lot of their problems. Okay, fine. But at the end of the day, what I think it says more than anything else is they've been slow to make changes. They haven't reacted quick enough, and it's finally caught up to them. And I think they now need to do that. They now need to make the requisite changes, which they're doing. They're building a new facility. They need to make the requisite changes to turn things around. The thing that I did find interesting is the players shitting on the plane. I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, not many teams have their own plane. I believe they might be the only one, as far as I can tell.
So, having listened to various shows throughout the week, people doing research, those planes are from 1991, which explains why they still have ashtrays in them. That's just
Wait a minute. The Patriots plane is from 1991?
Yes, 1991.
Okay. So obviously you bought it on sale.
Right, bro. I mean, right, maybe. I don't know.
It's like the Cleveland Indians playing in Major League.
When I read the report card, that was my first thought. Was them, they're on the flight. They say, where is the stewardess? I don't think there is any. That is my vision of the Patriots.
I don't think there is one.
Yeah, that was my vision when reading this. So, it's a bad look. The weight room thing is a huge issue. It's 2025. These guys are coming up in college programs with nicer weight rooms than most NFL teams. So if your facility sucks, you're going to hear about it. Now, that's also a commentary on college facilities these days that are just out of this world.
Right, and that's just it.
Right.
You needed these kinds of here's the thing. Schools invested in their facilities in the pre-transfer portal era. Not that they don't matter now because they matter even more. But in the pre-portal era 5, 6, 7 years ago, schools were pouring millions of dollars into their facilities because That they needed that to be their selling point, aside from playing time, the program, chance to compete for a title, all of those things. The facility is really what gets kids' attention and what gravitated them to programs. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys are coming from college programs that have better facilities.
Right. So their expectations are already high. And again, I speak in hyperbole. I don't think it's hyperbole to say both Boston College and UConn have better field houses than the Patriots do, and arguably better weight rooms. I don't think UConn's not even close. I think they've blown New England out of the water right now. So look, now you have guys coming from Georgia, Bama, Michigan, wherever, where their facilities are legitimate NFL style, meeting rooms and all that. I've said this to you for a couple years now. That locker room at Gillette feels small to me. For the size that those guys are, and I'm not saying it's a small, JV locker room, but for an NFL locker room, it's always just sort of felt small to me. So, yeah.
I just think you're trying to fit too many people in there between the players and coaches and personnel
Oh,
and the
fair enough.
media.
Yeah,
I mean, you're trying to cram a lot of people in there.
that's fair.
The
But
visiting
again,
locker room is even smaller.
it's much smaller. But so to your point, they're trying. They put in the daycare thing. I believe it was last year. They're trying, but again, you said it earlier. They're behind. They're still living in 2020, 2004, 2005, that era, and sort of trying to milk it, even with the fan base off of that. So they're coming along. That facility is going to be huge. We saw the original framework going up. Who knows how far along it is now? They're trying, but yeah, it's a bad look. But again, I just don't think. I think it's a bad run. I don't think that's who they are.
Yeah, no, we'll see. I mean, obviously, last year's report card sparked the building of the facility. I'm sure this year's report card will spark further changes as well. You are watching the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I am your host, John Sirenides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. You're watching the show now. You can listen to the podcast later. Podcast will be uploaded tonight, so please make sure that you give the show either another listen or listen to it for the first time. Just a reminder, we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you're in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, let's shift gears here now, Stone, talk a little bit of college football. Spring ball kicking off across the region. We've got 3 schools that have officially kicked off. Bryant kicked off on Thursday. Harvard kicked off last week. Merrimack kicks off today. We'll have a couple previews up there in the next couple of days for Harvard and Merrimack spring ball. All 3 of these programs are going to have a lot of new faces starting at key spots. But big picture, I mean, they're all going to be starting in earnest down the next week. By the beginning of next week, BC kicks off next Tuesday. UConn kicks off next week. UMass kicks off next week. So we're going to be in full spring ball mode. It's nice to see. It means that we're going to be busy. But these 3 programs that have kicked off here, and of course, we're going to be doing spring visits with all of them. I'm curious to see where these programs are, especially Bryant. I wrote about Bryant today and did a little spring preview for them. Coming off a 2-9 season, that's a program that needs to have a big turnaround season, but there's a lot of question marks, a lot of new faces, a lot of veterans there. But this Bryant program is a program that needs to bounce back and have a good season. Harvard, of course, gains another share of the Ivy League title, could have won it outright. Didn't happen. And another program that's got some key starters to replace, but some key faces back. Merrimack, a program that was very up and down at times last year, but they played one of the best schedules, if not the best schedule in New England. Mike Giannetti going into a second year. They're going to be looking to bounce back and be more competitive as an independent once again. But all 3 of these programs, Kevin, have some question marks like they all do. I mean, that's why you have spring ball. They all have question marks, but this is, in essence, the start of the 2025 season now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's also quitting time too. So looking forward to seeing all these staffs coming up the next few weeks. But just to touch on all of them real quick, Bryant, you mentioned it, second year in the CAA now. Chris Merritt better than I do. He's a program builder, though. I think that team is going to respond. Again, what was it? 75% of that roster was new or something like that
Yeah,
last year.
it was over 50%.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that having a full off season with those kids in the building and going through their program, that's huge. CAA is again, but arguably the best FCS conference in the country. So either way, even if they had a good year last year, you're always going to have a tough time competing in that conference. Merrimack, look, as independent, life is hard no matter what. So I think getting through that first year last year, especially with a new head coach, they knew him, but again, you don't know him in terms of how he's going to run his program and stuff like that. So for me, it's another case of just kids getting adjusted, right? Like getting a full offseason under him and sort of knowing what to expect. So I'd expect a bounce back year from them. I just don't love that they're not competing for something at the end of the year. In terms of who's in Harvard.
Well, they're competing for the Yankee Conference
Well,
Championship when they play
right.
Sacred Heart. I still don't understand how that works, but they
Right.
are playing for something.
Sure, yes, that's true. And then Harvard, we're already going to start saying it. It's only March, but competitive every year. Like I expect them to be in the hunt heading into that final week, and it's going to come down to Harvard Yale again. It's seemingly
But
always
they're
that.
right. You're bringing back Jaden Craig, but you got a lot of
But I do again.
lot of production there that needs to replace, namely that they need to replace, namely Cooper Barcade at wide receiver. I think Xavier Bascon's primed to have a huge year at running back, the Swampscott product, but yeah, they've got to replace some key pieces up front too. You lose Austin Gento, you lose Michael Entwistle. I mean, they've got a lot of pieces that they need to replace that were key contributors to that football team.
Oh, I agree. But again, seemingly it just is what it is with the Ivy League, right? Like every year, everybody's in it. And I go back to just the program, having another offseason. I found it impressive how they responded to Coach Ulrich, that early and that effectively to have the season they had last year. Tim Murphy was there for 30 years. Like that's not an easy transition. So just for them to have the year they did last year, I'd expect them to start off well at the very least. Again, just having the offseason. And you mentioned BC starting next week. As always, I have high expectations for them. We talked about this, I think, last week or the week before. They have a deep roster. If you go through each position group, barring health, of course, which is always an issue for them, especially on defense, especially a linebacker. If they have the health, they have a deep, deep team. Now, it's an unproven team and a team that hasn't gotten a lot of experience in terms of reps, game reps. But if the pieces are there, that's a good team. Again, only thing I'm worried about is their schedule. It is not easy, but all of their hard games are at home. So, but yeah, season's here. And again, we'll be seeing a lot of the staffs as well, starting with the clinics coming up these next few weekends. But it's my favorite time of year by far.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of these programs in person as well. You mentioned Bryant, of course. How do the Bulldogs bounce back after a tough 2-9 season? They got to replace Jared Guest at quarterback. Got to replace Landon Ruggieri, wide receiver. A lot of production there for Brees Mukendi at running back, but they've got some good depth, and I think that depth is going to really step up and develop for them. Brennan Mayer, quarterback from Frisco, Texas, is a player to keep an eye on. They really like him. They're going to have a quarterback competition this spring, but he'll certainly be in a good spot to have a shot to be the starter. Defensively, the good thing is you bring back some experience in the secondary for them. Bring back Michael Lottie as a grad guy up front, which I think will help. You got Andre Smith at linebacker, so they've got some experience coming back in Anthony Barisi's defense. Harvard, we talked about how do you replace all the talent that they got to replace. They always recruit well, especially along the offensive line. So I suspect that they'll have no problem filling in some of those openings, and that's what spring football is for, to create competition and to identify guys that can step up and play for you. I think defensively it's going to be the same thing as well. They got to replace some key pieces, but I do think that they're going to be fine on defense. And Merrimack, what do you do with quarterback? Is it Aiden Pereira? We'll see. I mean, he played well. What's that?
Probably should be, right?
Well, I mean, we don't. That's why you have spring ball. So who knows? but they've got to replace some key guys as well. I mean, Jermaine Corbett was huge for them. I had him on last week on the Field of Draft live stream. Getting him to come in from Stonehill, I mean, he ended up being a monster for them. He was huge. They also lost Donovan Wadley in the portal. He ended up at Central Connecticut State. So they got to replace some key guys as well. But again, Coach Giannetti and the staff are going to use this spring as an opportunity to evaluate the roster, see what guys can step up and fill some of those roles. So it'll be interesting. And then you mentioned Boston College. Of course, they announced last week they're not going to be playing a spring game, which is admittedly, selfishly, from a media standpoint, for me, it's disappointing. I look forward to that spring game every year. I attended it for years as a fan, and having the opportunity to cover it the last 3 years, it is disappointing that they're not going to be having a spring game. Doesn't appear that UConn's going to be either, based on the schedule that they put out. So this is the lay of the land, though. And I wrote about this a couple of weeks back about how spring ball is changing now. And Jed Fish, the head coach at Washington, Kevin, came out last week and said, maybe it's time for college football to adopt the NFL offseason schedule. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but this is going to become the norm, particularly at the FBS level. You're going to see less and less schools doing spring games. And unfortunately, we rely on those spring games for coverage, and so does ESPN. I mean, they get big advertising dollars, as I said last week, for the rights to cover those spring games. And the fact that that's not going to be there for them now to fill some of that programming void in the spring, it's certainly a loss. But this is what we're going to be seeing now. We're going to be seeing more and more programs not do a spring game. I think eventually, as you go along here, I think you're only going to have so much access to spring ball because, again, these programs are going to want to protect their players. My estimation, it's a shame. Like I said, I really enjoyed covering that BC spring game. I guess now we'll have to get our fill with these FCS spring games.
Yeah, I mean, Holy Cross, UMass, still have a few on the docket. I know Merrimack has theirs under the lights. So, like you said, there are some
UNH is still doing the Thursday night one as well. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's still going to be some around here. But look, ACC Network, they aired an entire day of them. So, yeah, you're right about the TV networks. But Matt Rule at Nebraska, I thought he had some interesting comments last week. He's just like, look, it's not worth other coaches trying to poach our players. We see a kid have a good spring game. Like last year, Reed Harris, who I had talked about a lot in spring, he went off in that spring game last year. Who knows how many offers he got just based off of that being on ACC Network. So I can understand why coaches don't want to do it. You're right. It sucks for us. It's good content. And I said this last week. It's a good family day, right? Like kids can go out and see the stadium for free and stuff like that. So it's disappointing, but again, you said it, it's understandable at this point. The way the transfer portal is now, you can't risk showcasing a guy in March or April and not have him on your team in July and August.
But I think that's the stupid part of it. Rather than doing it right and legislating the portal so that it's not the Wild West, schools are turning around now and saying, we're not going to do spring ball anymore, which is fine. Then don't do a spring game. But my issue is you're not doing a spring game because of the transfer portal. And because of that, because the NCAA doesn't want to try to legislate that. Look, I get being hands-off with NIL. Now you're playing with people's money, their likeness and image. I get that, okay? I know once you open Pandora's box when it came to money in college football and players getting paid, it was going to spiral out of control, and it has. All of that being said, though, you can still legislate and better manage the portal, and they're choosing not to. And it's a microcosm of our society today, where we don't want to take on problems. We don't want to fix things. We just want to sit back, let Rome burn, and say, well, this is what the people wanted. No, this is not what the people wanted. This is what a group of people wanted. Now, in this case, this group of people obviously is very powerful and influential because it's the players. But at the end of the day, to not legislate any of this is idiotic. I've been very clear on my feelings on that. I think it shows poor leadership by Chuck Baker and the NCAA. I think it just goes to show you that there is no such thing as leadership because people are a bunch of wusses like he is being, like they are being, and they don't want to take on this issue and try to corral the portal and try to make it more manageable. They don't want to do it because it's just easier to sit back and watch it happen because they're afraid they're going to get sued. So at the end of the day, it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. I can see why coaches don't want to do these spring games. And like I said, they're going to become less and less and less. There's going to be less and less of them, I should say, because again, you can't risk putting a player out there. I mean, these coaches, Kevin, they don't even want to they don't even want to nominate players for all conference and all league teams because they're afraid that once that list gets out in public and other coaches see it, they're going to slide into these players' DMs and try to recruit them over.
Yeah, look, we've been lucky. Every coach that we've ever dealt with the 16 teams, 16 Division One teams around here, access has always been phenomenal. But I wouldn't even fault them if, and you mentioned this a little while ago, if spring practices start to get closed a little bit. Like, around here.
Well, let's not give them any ideas. I mean, I'm thinking it too. Believe me, I'm thinking it too. But let's not give them any ideas.
I know, but like just, for example, when Bob Chesney was here, we'd say, hey, do you mind if we come down? And we'd get a response saying, sure, do you want a practice plan? Like, coaches are they can't be that open anymore. And it's not their fault. It's the way of the land right now.
Yeah, the system sucks.
And it's also why Bill O'Brien repeatedly has said there needs to be a commissioner for college football. And I think it's a perfect time for it. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but he's right. It's ugly out there.
But what is the commissioner going to do regarding the portal? Are they going to work with the NCAA to legislate it?
Well, right.
That's what it needs. It needs to be reined in. And so I've heard the commissioner idea being mentioned by several people. Chip Kelly mentioned it a couple of years ago. Of course, people are throwing out names. David Shaw and
Belichick has been good.
Belichick has been, and Saban, and all these other guys have been mentioned. And that's great, and it's good in theory. But again, the biggest issue facing college football today isn't even NIL. It's the portal. That's what you need to get a handle on. And I don't think that they can get a handle on it. I think that is ultimately the problem here, unfortunately, for college football. But as I mentioned, it doesn't appear that UConn is doing one. UMass is doing one on April 19th, so that'll be good for a Minutemen fans to get out there and see Joe Harasimiak's squad. It's gonna be a lot of new faces. There's a lot of turnover in that roster. Harasimiak and his staff have had to go into the portal to try to retool the roster. So this is an important spring game for UMass. But nonetheless, again, we're going to be out there covering as much as we can, giving you the best possible college football coverage in New England. It's what we do. It's what we love. So we'll get it out to you. But it is disappointing nonetheless. But if you're a Bryant football fan, Merrimack football fan, Harvard football fan, get out there and check out your programs this spring. They have kicked off spring ball, and it'll give you your first look at those programs ahead of the 2025 season. Start some high school football here before we wrap up. Some big news out of Connecticut this past weekend. Ben Rolap, the junior quarterback from Darien High School, announced that he is transferring and reclassifying. He is transferring to the Brunswick School to play for Wayne McGillicuddy. Obviously, a big loss for Andy Grant's squad at Darien. I got a chance to talk to Ben over the weekend, and I wrote a piece that's up on Any Football Journal right now. I caught up with him. And pretty simply put, Ben and his family felt that he needed the extra year from a developmental standpoint, and he's going to get an opportunity to go play for Coach McGillicuddy, who has a good reputation as a coach. Obviously, we saw what he did with Blake Hebert the last couple of years, a former Central Catholic quarterback who transferred down to Brunswick. But the bottom line is, Kevin, if you look at this objectively, obviously, when a kid in his family thinks that the extra year of development would help, then they take the opportunity. They at least explore opportunities. And then if one presents itself, they take it. Rolap put up big numbers at Darien. That the opportunity presented itself, and he took it.
Yeah, look, we've talked a lot about how much the portal hurts high school kids, right? So why not? If you're a high school kid, what's the point of graduating on time at this point? Like, develop your skills, develop who you are as a player and a person, develop body-wise too, and, take another shot with an extra year or so. So, frankly, I think we're going to see more of it. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'd be surprised if this isn't sort of the way kids – I don't think it's going to take over the high school game per se, but I think you're going to start to see even more of it.
Well, we've been seeing it. We've been seeing a lot of public school kids that are making the move to private schools. I mean, look, typically with Catholic schools, kids enroll in Catholic schools as freshmen and they play all 4 years at a Catholic school. It's a little different with the private schools. That extra year now, that ability to reclassify is important to these kids. And so, I think you bring up a good point that I don't think enough people are talking about, and that is if a kid in their family feels that extra year of development will help them in the recruiting process, and this has always been the case. It's not like it's some newfounded thing, but if they believe that that's going to help them get recruited in this crowded market, then they're more likely to transfer and try to take that chance to see if that year of additional development helps. I mean, the bottom line is, look, Rolap is a good player. I mean, I feel bad for Darien because they also lost Thomas Hergen. I mean, he is a good player. And he put up big numbers playing in a good offense with a very talented skill group. I mean, he started for them as a sophomore. So, again, I think it's a situation where he looked at what was coming back based on the comments, reading between the lines. I'm sure he looked at what was coming back. I'm sure he looked at himself and where he was in terms of his development, and he ultimately made the right decision for him and his family, at least in their eyes. So at the end of the day, look, I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm always going to be a public school guy, but it's hard to fault the kid when they feel that they can play at the next level, but they're also mature enough to recognize that they need that extra year of development to get that opportunity. Regardless, Ben's a great kid. We want to wish him luck. Looking forward to covering him at Brunswick next season. And we've had the opportunity the last couple of years to cover him at Darien. So, again, want to wish Ben the best of luck. And I want to wish the Darien football program the best of luck. Hopefully they're able to it's a great program with a great history and tradition. Hopefully Coach Grant and his staff has some young talent coming up that can step up and fill the void. And, of course, big news in Massachusetts yesterday, Matt Cerullo was hired as the head football coach at North Andover High School. Cerullo was already on staff as defensive coordinator for John Dobzinski. Kevin, you got a chance to talk to Coach Cerullo for a piece we did yesterday on his appointment. And I think that this is a pretty smart hire. It's a pretty good hire. North Andover is a good program. Keeping it in-house with Coach Cerullo looks like it's a good move.
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we talked about, the importance of hiring a guy who understands program tradition. I think we were talking about Wayne Page and Grafton. Just keeping a guy in-house or having a guy that's been through the program or been part of the program that understand what it means to the kids from that town, right? Like we talk about high school pride sort of not existing anymore, but towns like that, it still does. So I think keeping a guy that's been around is huge. He understands the kids, already knows them. It makes the transition much easier, much faster. It's a great hire. And just for him personally, he said it just feels like the right time for him to take it. And he feels like he's ready. So I'd expect, again, that's a program that always has high expectations, right? Like you always expect to see them in the playoff conversation when those brackets come out in November. I'd expect them to still be there. And again, for me, that having that guy with the program pride just means so much, I think, especially today's day and age in football.
Yeah, we want to wish Coach Cerullo the best of luck. Obviously, he's familiar with the program. He's been around the kids. So for him, it should be a pretty easy transition. We've had a bunch of hires here. We still get some openings out there that need to be filled throughout the region. And when they do, we'll make sure that we update you on that. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Last couple minutes here before we sign off. Thoughts on North Carolina football being on Hard Knocks? I mean, and I said this to John Lyons yesterday on Patriots Pulse. North Carolina has been a basketball program forever. I mean, it's been a basketball school, rather, forever. I mean, when you think of North Carolina, you think of North Carolina basketball. But I've said it for years, Kevin, that administration has always wanted to be good in football. They've invested in football, unlike some of these other hoop schools. They've invested in football. They've done it both in terms of trying to hire guys that can raise the profile of the program and help it win. And they've invested in facilities. And now they made the ultimate investment in Bill Belichick. And now with them appearing on Hard Knocks, this is the strongest sign yet to me that they want to be a college football player. That Bubba Cunningham, the AD, the administration there, they recognize that as big as March Madness is and as big as college hoops is, college football is even bigger. And there's more money to be made. and they want a piece of that pie. I think it's going to make for great television seeing them on Hard Knocks. We never got to see the Patriots on it. I mean, we did get that inside look during the 2009 season, and I thought that was fantastic. Great job by NFL Films. I'm excited for this. I think it's going to be – I think we're going to see another side of Belichick. And look, everything Belichick does is calculated, right? Like, he's not just doing this to raise the profile of the North Carolina football program. He's also using it as a highlight reel for himself to show NFL owners that, hey, if after this season you have an opening and you need a proven program builder to come back in and turn things around, here's a prime example of what I can do for you.
It's marketing. He's marketing himself for another job. That's all he's doing.
It's good for the program too, though. It's not just for him.
It is, but I'm curious, one, how much sort of pulling needed to be done to get him involved, and two, is this Jordan saying, hey, look, do this. It's a good sort of spotlight for you. It's the girlfriend. That's actually her name.
Isn't it Jordan?
No, it's Jordon. I believe it's Jordan. I'm kidding.
I gotta look this up. You make her sound like she's some kind of a perfume or a cologne. Jordan.
But either way,
Jordan.
I think she's been part of his entire media tour.
Christian Dior presents Jordan.
Right. Like, I think she's been behind everything. I really do.
I think you're giving her way too much credit, Jordan.
So what? So I'm not saying like she's the reason he took the job or anything, but in terms of the media stuff, I think she's a driving force behind that.
I think you're giving her too much credit.
Okay. In terms of
she doesn't work for the school, so I mean, so she's young.
She's a cheerleading coach.
What's that?
She's the cheerleading coach.
She's the cheerleading coach. When did that happen? How did I not know about that?
I believe she is.
All right. You've done way too much research on her. You tell me that her name is Jordan, and then now you tell me that she's the cheerleading coach. Now I know what you're doing during the day.
No, this is all. I have not done any of this research. This has all been through sports radio here in our wonderful market. But
do I think she's influenced his thought process to a degree? Sure. He's 73. She's 24. I mean, he's old enough to be her grandfather, but I mean, I'm not sure that Jordan is driving the wagon here when it comes to the direction of the North Carolina football program.
No, so that's what I mean, though. She's, in terms of the media stuff, that's what I think.
She's savvy, right? She's young. Yeah. She's savvy.
Yeah. No, of course she's not making, football decisions with Lombardi, making phone calls and recruiting. Of course not. But I ultimately.
By the way, not for nothing. How much, I mean, when he went to NFL honors, obviously she got all jazzed up, had one of his Super Bowl rings on.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're him, he's 72 going on 73. For him, he's got to say to himself, hey, she's with me. Yeah, that's right. But to your point about her being involved in some capacity, I mean, how much more can he use her? I'm not trying to be a creep or a weirdo here.
That's my point.
I mean,
she's here for the media stuff. That's it. In terms of like how she can help him, I think. But look, ultimately for the football program,
does she know about Snapface?
Probably she must, right?
Instaface.
No, but so in terms of what Hard Knocks does for a football program, it's massive. Like in terms of recruiting, come be on HBO. Like that's all you need to say in a kid's living room. Speaking of which, we never even touched on it. They landed the #1 recruit in Massachusetts last week in Anthony Hall. I was lucky enough to be there when he made the announcement. Phenomenal speech, very emotional. It was a packed gymnasium for him. Great kid. I know you've met him.
We talked about it last week.
I can't remember what I did 2 days ago. So,
it's because you're too busy being knee deep in Jordan research.
Yeah, that's it. But to the point of North Carolina and recruiting, he was able to come in here, get started late on his recruiting.
And by the way, not to cut you off, be careful with the #1 recruit in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Depends on who you ask.
Correct.
That's 24/7's point of view.
Sure.
Don't just recklessly call the kid the #1 recruit in Massachusetts. The nerve of you.
I can't believe I made that mistake.
Yes.
Rivals
don't do it again.
Rivals has him at number 4. 24/7, who did the presentation, had him at #1. So overall, he's a great kid. B, that's the type of kid Bill Belichick can recruit by name only. I
Yep.
talked to Casey Day afterwards, and he said, look, I talk to big time coaches all the time. And of course he does. He has some great players going to great schools, as does many of the other coaches, as do many of the other coaches around here. But he said, look, when Bill Belichick walked in, I said I had to take a picture with him. I broke my own rule. I usually don't take pictures with coaches, but I had to send it to my mother to show her I was talking to Bill Belichick. Like, that's the pull he has.
Boyfriend of Jordan.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So, look, being on HBO, you can't match that recruiting wise. You just can't.
No,
I'm curious to
it's huge
see.
exposure.
I'm curious how much sort of negotiation is going to go into it in terms of final cut.
I agree, because I mean, we know how much of a control freak Belichick is, and
Right.
what he wants out there and what he doesn't want out there. But I thought the other thing that was interesting, Kevin, was that no team in the NFL wanted to do it after the Joe Shane fiasco last year.
I was surprised. Okay, well,
I wasn't. I
no?
wasn't after that. The only reason I wasn't after that scene with Wellington Mara and the Saquon scene and how Joe Shane handled that.
Mhm.
I think a lot of teams looked at that from an organizational standpoint and said, look, we can't have cameras in the office when we're making key decisions about free agents and who we're going to draft. We can't have cameras in the office in those moments in terms of what players we bring back and what players we don't bring back. And we certainly can't have cameras in there when we're deciding on how we're going to talk about each player in this draft and who we want to take. I mean, I think the Giants exposed themselves way too much last spring, and I think teams around the league saw that and said, nope, we're good.
Well, so that's my thing, though. Why I was surprised but this has been a decade plus. I think I'm trying to remember. 09 even might have been the first Hard Knocks. Like, why now? Why is it?
No, I think it might be longer than that. It's pushing 20 years.
Yeah. So, but why now? Like, the Giants made themselves look that dumb that other teams are now worried about exposing themselves.
Well, you got to remember, last year was the first year of the off-season version of the show.
Fair enough.
So all of a sudden now they're doing an off-season version, they're
True.
doing a training camp version, and they're doing an in-season version by division. So I think personally, you've milked that cow enough. I think that you've gotten every last drop out of the cow at this point.
Yeah.
Either just do the training camp one and call it a day, or don't do it at all. Because to me, this is overkill. Yes, people like me who are football junkies, I eat, sleep, and drink the game. I'm 24/7, 365 football. I love that shit. I love the inside look. But I think at the end of the day, it's overkill. And again, after what happened last offseason with the Giants, I think that might have been a one and done thing with Hard Knocks in the offseason. I think it might end up becoming a college thing now. Who knows? But I think after the way it was handled by the Giants last year, I think teams are going to. There's a lot of trepidation there. Let's put it that way.
So look, I grew up with a show called Playmakers. I don't know if you remember it on ESPN. It was sort of a spinoff on behind the scenes of football. So back then, I would have killed for Hard Knocks. I'm just surprised now teams are like, all right, we don't want to expose ourselves anymore just because the Giants made themselves look so bad. The in-season stuff I get, I'm good with it if you don't want to do it. It makes total sense. So, but are they still doing an off-season one? Do we know?
North Carolina. No NFL team agreed to do it.
So that's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm still.
So North Carolina's taking the place of the NFL
theirs, right?
of an NFL team. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's again why now. If certain NFL teams just didn't want to do it, but honestly, I think college is going to be better anyways. Just knowing HBO, it is a TV show. They'll play up some of the drama that is college campus life, right? Like, I got to imagine there'll be.
Well, I don't think they're going to be going to parties with these.
Well, no, but I'm talking the realism, like the day-to-day life of having to deal with class and being a football player.
That part of it, I think, will be pretty cool.
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to see.
Oh, of course.
I would love to see them give us an in-depth look at their
you see Belichick
nightlife and partying habits, but I don't see that happening.
No, you see Belichick dragging a kid out of a house by his neck, like, be hilarious. But
you see Jordan. Going to a sorority party to get one of her cheerleaders.
Right. So no, again, you can't replicate that kind of exposure for recruiting. So ultimately, it's a win-win for everyone. I was surprised he's going to do it, but I also, again, I do think she's kind of pushing the media stuff for him too.
I'm still curious about the way you pronounce her name. I can't get over that. I don't think that that's her name.
I'm fairly certain. I could be wrong. I usually am in a lot of things.
Oh, I'm aware of that. I work with you every day.
But no, it's again, it's good for recruiting. But just his name alone, even without HBO,
Yeah. It's definitely Jordan.
it's okay. That's fine.
Because I'm just looking at her name. It's Jordan Hudson.
But my way's better, anyways.
Well, no, you
I was
inexplicably
told that's how it's pronounced.
jazzed it. Who told you that?
I don't
No
know.
one told you that. No one
100%.
told you that it's Jordan.
100%.
No, who told you that?
I don't remember.
I want you to reveal your source right now.
Never.
I don't buy this. I think it's bullshit. Nobody
That's
told
fine.
you that. I call bullshit.
Okay.
Jordan by
Sounds better.
Calvin Klein.
It's way better for the narrative, anyways.
All right. You got any final thoughts here, Jordan?
No, just again, I love the clinic
Other
time
than the
of year.
fact that you look like a tool sitting in your house dressed like you're outside. You look
That's
like you're
cool.
ice fishing.
You should see how I dress for lacrosse games pretty soon. It's brutal. But no, I mean, again, clinic time and spring ball time when we really get to talk to these staffs and just sort of shoot the breeze with them and get ready for the season is my favorite time of year. It's a busy time of year, but I love it. So between this time, pro day, and then obviously draft stuff, I know that's your wheelhouse. So it's basically football season. Again, stick with us as always.
Yeah, and the next time we do this show, you'll be 37. Hard to believe. So
I
if you
feel
see
50.
Stone on Friday, make sure you wish him a happy birthday.
Wednesday.
Okay, or Wednesday.
Oh wait, hey,
So it's March 5th.
correct.
Okay, I thought it was the 6th for some reason.
Nope, my dad's the 8th. You can wish him a happy birthday on Saturday.
All right, so if you see Mr. Stone on the 8th, on Saturday, wish him a happy birthday. And if you see Stone on Wednesday, which coincides with Ash Wednesday,
Yeah.
wish him a happy birthday. Happy 37th for Stone.
Thank you in advance. I can't have my steak dinner though.
Happy birthday, brother. Why can't you have? Oh, that's right, because of
Ash
Ash
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Gotta be
Yep,
a good boy.
you are a good little Catholic, my friend. Well, happy birthday. Happy early birthday to you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Jordan will reach out to wish you a happy early birthday.
Can't wait for that DM.
Don't tell Belichick. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. Yes, it did go off the rails there at the end, but whatever. It happens. Kevin Stone, I'm John Serenitas. Wish Stone a happy birthday if you get a chance on Wednesday. Until next week, peace.
See ya.